Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like button, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So David Morrow Jr. defeats Lennox by a unanimous decision to become the new WBA interim super middleweight champion. First and foremost, what a name for a Cuban, David Morrell. From here on out, with a name like that, I'm actually going to claim this guy as English. My man sounds like he's from Sheffield or Barnsley, but David Morrow Jr., he defeats Lennox by a unanimous decision, and in my opinion, he looked pretty decent doing it. For those who don't know, David Morrow Jr. is a Cuban prospect. He was an amateur standout, and unlike a lot of other Cuban amateurs who turn pro, David Morrow Jr. has actually turned pro quite young. He's actually only 22 years old, and this fight against Lennox was only his third fight. You know, Lennox had a record going into this fight of 22 wins and 1 draw, so the guy had a pretty good record on paper, and ultimately in your third fight, this was a solid opponent in my opinion. As I said, he won this fight pretty well. David Morrow Jr. is not your typical Cuban fighter who kind of mulls around on the back foot, popping out a jab and being very economic with his punches. He's not that sort of fighter. David Morrow Jr. is a guy who actually likes to set his feet and actually let go of combinations, you know, switching from body to head, getting creative with his combinations, and he actually takes a few risks. I actually quite enjoy this guy's style, you know. I like his shot selection, he's got pretty good hand speed, he's got a bit of swagger about him, you know. He likes to showboat here and there, but I found him actually quite entertaining, to be honest. Not convinced by his power going by this fight, to be honest. He actually won his first 2 fights by knockout, but those guys were journeymen at a low level. And in this fight against Lennox, he never really hurt Allen all that seriously. I think he buzzed him a couple of times here and there, maybe hurt him to the body once or twice. But Lennox was in no real danger of getting stopped in this fight. So in terms of power, maybe that could be a weakness, but ultimately I like his style. And I think he's got a pretty good upside, considering the guy's only 22 years old. He showed some real signs of quality in this fight, in my opinion. You know, glimpses of real good quality with combinations and counter-punching. But yeah, first few rounds it was actually relatively competitive. Morrell was actually in charge for the most part, but he was getting countered at times, particularly with Lennox Allen's right hook. Lennox Allen was a southpaw, and he was actually timing David Morrow Jr. with his right hook. One thing I actually noticed and appreciated from David Morrell was the fact that as this fight went on, that counter right hook from Lennox Allen was becoming less of a factor. He was avoiding it more and more as the fight went on. He read that right hook quite effectively and he avoided it well, so I liked that adjustment. And yeah, ultimately in this fight, it was mainly David Morrell kind of outworking his opponent, changing levels with his combinations, working the body, coming upstairs with headshots. His jab was pretty effective at times. I would have liked to have seen David Morrell maybe use that jab a bit more regularly, but when he used it, it was very effective. And yeah, this was a very workmanlike performance, I would say, but a fight in which he pretty much had his own way, really. You know, Lennox, you know, he took some good shots, he showed some ambition, but ultimately the skill level here, there was a gap in skill level, and yeah, David Morrell really was just in charge throughout. And yeah, like I said, man, I mean, I liked what I saw personally. I see David Morrow Jr. as a guy with a decent skill set already, who can go on to improve a lot more in the future. Like I said, the guy's only 22 years old. I saw a few people on Twitter kind of critique the performance, which is fair enough. He was getting caught with some silly shots here and there. He was getting a bit too adventurous now and again, and he was getting caught, like I said. But these are mistakes that can be ironed out. Like I said, he's 22 years old, and, you know, this was a step up for your third fight. You know, a guy who was unbeaten in 23 fights, whatever it was. Certainly a step up. And Lennox Allen, to be fair, didn't look like a terrible fighter by any means. So, all in all, was it a perfect performance? No, absolutely not. But did David Morrow Jr. show signs of potential and quality? Absolutely. Absolutely. And in the future, you know, this guy's only going to get better, so he's certainly a guy I'm looking out for. And like I said, I enjoy his style. And it's interesting, like I said, he's a young Cuban. He's got a bit of swagger about him. He doesn't really stick and move. He does trade. He does throw combinations. And he actually speaks English. So, this guy's kind of breaking that Cuban mould, that stereotypical Cuban mould. So, listen, I like his style. His style isn't really actually all that Cuban, to be honest. His style is more almost Eastern European, or maybe more accurately Central Asian. He reminds me a lot of these fighters from Azerbaijan and Uzbekistan. His style's not all that Cuban, to be honest. But, yeah, I like this guy. Seems like a character. Pretty good style to watch. Listen, man, I'm relatively impressed. Anyway, share your thoughts below. What did you make of this guy's performance? Peace.